Kenneth French, a child with a developmental disability, started getting overstimulated while waiting in the line at Costco. As a result, he started panicking and struck off-duty officer Salvador Sanchez, who took it upon himself to draw his gun and end Kenneth's life. NBC Los Angeles reported on February 13, 2024, the California Department of Justice decided to drop the charges of voluntary manslaughter and assault after a mistrial, while the family was awarded a cash settlement and a casket. Lack of understanding of people with disabilities is not just a safety concern. It can be a fatal risk. Disability Rights California reports on March 15, 2024, that of the 16 million people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, or IDD, 50% of people killed by police have a disability. Police Brutality Center reported on July 10, 2024, police are often inadequately trained to recognize behavior that is common for those with IDD. The inability to recognize a disability is the easiest way for a police officer to use excessive force, with no regard for safety. So today, we explore the problems, causes, and solutions to help ensure the safety of those with IDD. When police officers warrant an arrest, we can only hope that one day it doesn't end in a death sentence. The two biggest problems that people with disabilities face in the criminal justice system is overrepresentation and casualties. First, overrepresentation. According to Prison Policy Initiative on August 28, 2024, 40% of people in the criminal justice system have a disability, where around half of them have reported being overrepresented as nothing more than suspects, defendants, and incarcerated persons. From an untrained police officer's perspective, the manifestation of a disability can cause suspicion. For example, according to CBS News Colorado on May 2nd, 2022, 34-year-old Hayden Graham was pulled over for an expired registration. The police officers on the scene failed to recognize that Hayden had cerebral palsy. So when he got a little bit nervous, they double cuffed him, tased him, threw him to the ground, and arrested him. The police officer saw one thing that day: a behavioral problem. But it could have led to his death, leading us to our second problem: casualties of those with disabilities. Disability Rights California continues that in this year alone, around 1 in 15 police encounters has led to the fatalities of our population. One particularly notable incident was reported by The Guardian on March 21st, 2024. 15-year-old Ryan Gaynor was having a meltdown in his family home when police officers responded to a 911 call from one of his family members. Ryan was nonverbal. It could only communicate through sign language. When the police officers failed to warrant his attention, they viewed him as a threat, and he became a statistic. Hadia Kennedy, a former LAPD officer, told reporters, "The police officers on the scene should have calmed the situation, but instead, they forever destroyed this family." So let's examine why many police officers struggle to work within the IDD community through two causes: inadequate training and the effectiveness of the Americans with Disabilities Act. First, inadequate training. According to police officer Luis Maza on August 21st, 2023, police receive little to no training when it comes to working within the IDD community. The only required training is Crisis Intervention Training, or CIT. The National Alliance for Mental Illness reports that crisis intervention training creates connections between law enforcement, hospital emergency services, mental health providers, people with mental illnesses, and their families. This leaves out those with disabilities as the most vulnerable to overrepresentation and becoming the next victims, which is a strict violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act, claiming our second cause. The Americans with Disabilities Act was signed and passed on July 26, 1990, in hopes that it would ensure equality among those with disabilities and their able-bodied counterparts. Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act states that people with disabilities are not to be excluded, segregated, or treated differently than any other person when it comes to a police encounter. However, our previously mentioned stories indicate police are failing to provide this treatment. According to In These Times, on July 26, 2024, the ADA fails to address the dire needs for systemic changes in the way we are treated by cops, courts, jails, and prisons, putting the rest of our population in jeopardy. It's clear. Police officers are lacking the necessary skills to work within the IDD community. So let's look at two solutions, a legislative solution and a personal solution to these issues. The ARC, the oldest and largest IDD community-based nonprofit in the United States, created Just Policing, Disability Inclusion Training on May 20, 2024, which is led by ARC staff, police trainers, and self-advocates who provide comprehensive knowledge on increasing awareness of biases, effective communication skills, and recognizing IDD behavior. This training also prioritizes the IDD community along with all other marginalized groups. In this year alone, the ARC was able to train around 2,000 police officers nationwide, which is why we need to federally mandate this for all police officers by turning to SB 882. This bill has created the Advisory Council, which requires instruction in basic training when engaging with the IDD community. This bill was signed and passed on September 30th, 2022 by Governor Gavin Newsom. However, this bill does not specify which training the police departments are required to use. So, at the end of the round, please scan this QR code, which will give you access to my letter advocating for the ARC's training's incorporation into the Commissions on Peace Officer Standards and Training. You can sign it, send it to your local commission, and advocate for this training's incorporation. In the meantime, I ask that we all advocate for all police departments to become autism certified by the International Board for Continuing Education Services. Pepperdine University states in May of 2022 that the autism certification process teaches police officers about patience, understanding, and calming situations. Not only does this prioritize the autism community, but all other parts of the IDD community. In this year alone, Modesto, California is now home to the first ever autism certified police department. Modesto is making a change, and we can do the same by telling police officers that there are better ways to avert a crisis. The people who took an oath to serve and protect have struggled to protect the rights of those with IDD, and we can solve this. Today, we explored the problems, causes, and solutions to help ensure the safety of those with IDD, because the failure to recognize a disability is the easiest way for a police officer to use excessive force, without considering the fact that every person could be the next victim. So as we remember Kenneth, let his story be the reason that this training is incorporated so that our population no longer has to live in fear of the same fatality.